This is day 1 of the August 87 7-day retreat. Since there are so many new people, and also it cannot be talked about often enough, let us begin by looking at what it means to listen to a talk. What is involved? How is one listening? The talk is not given to impart authoritative knowledge, information about things or people. It is an opportunity during a retreat for us to talk and listen together. Look into things that concern each one of us, including the one who's talking. If one has an image of the person who's giving a talk as being someone different, special, authority, then that prevents this free participating in what is being said, the free looking and investigating, verifying, which is of utmost importance to take place if there should be any meaning to a talk like this. We've all remembered things since we were born. In school, we were indoctrinated and inculcated and fed enormous amounts of data, information, knowledge, theories, ideas, facts that we had to remember, were asked or trained to remember. But this is not what this is about. This is looking now at what happens in the human mind and body, how we live together, relate to each other, or are incapable of relating to each other, and try to look at the causes right now. As one person happens to be speaking. Can the listening as well as the speaking come from the same place of openness, of a fresh interest to listen and speak about something one may have heard and talked about many times before, but that doesn't matter, that's past, and it doesn't need to be cluttering the mind. One does not need to roam through the files of what one heard or said before and try to say it that way again or hear it that way again. It's very shallow speaking and listening. It begins to have some depth to it when the listening and speaking is now. Happens freshly, even though the files may make available examples or the whole language with which we communicate with each other. They're given through memory. But the actual formulation happens now, freshly. And is not the important thing. How something is formulated is not the important thing. What is important is the openness of mind and body to look without fear, without resistance, trying to understand how we're living each moment. So can one see from this that it is totally irrelevant to see oneself as anything. Student or teacher are the two examples that come to mind. It's totally irrelevant, these images. Not only irrelevant, but a hindrance, because they already shape and influence the perception to a tremendous degree. I usually say a lot about the fact that I don't see myself as a teacher, but then it challenges some people to tell me, well, you're one anyways, because you're sitting there and I'm not sitting there, or somebody else, and there's a microphone there. So let's grant all that. There's a person sitting here with a mic. But what is important and alive with significance is that one be here with an openness of listening and looking, inquiring and seeing. Not who says it or who is listening. The personalities, the backgrounds, the different training that one has had or affiliations that one does have matter not at all. If there is this openness of listening which is free from the background, free from the past, because there's attention. It matters a lot if one listens from that background, because then immediately one will compare what she's saying to what someone else is saying. And comparison is the termination of listening and the beginning of a different kind of activity in the brain, which involves memory and intellect, removed from what is actually happening. It is important to point this out every time, and maybe we will talk about it during retreat, depending on what comes up in meetings, because we're so yearning to find somebody who we can completely trust, completely put our faith in, and therefore completely follow, which relieves us of the burden of uncertainty, helplessness, not knowing what to think, what to do. And wanting that security, we turn over this innate capacity to look for oneself to somebody else, and then just exercise faith and belief and follow what this person says, even if it doesn't seem to make sense at times, or more and more as one follows more and more. Does one see that yearning in oneself to find the ultimate authority, the ultimate teacher? So that one can go on with one's habitual and well-trained mental processes of taking over the words, remembering them, using them, convincing others through the words, proselytizing and so forth, for what one believes in, trying to get more and more people that believe in the same thing so that there's a shared sense of importance in one's belief. The very fact that more and more people believe in the same thing gives one energy. The thought, the idea of it, and the physical presence may be energizing. And that energy coming from the sharing of belief and faith is mistaken for validating, for a validation of it, which it is not. The amount of people that believe in something do not validate what they believe in. What validates it? How will one go about to validate something that is being said? How will one know that the person who's talking is saying something true, something that's actually so? Not an opinion that can be countered with counter-opinion, but saying something that is so, that is true. How will one be able to validate that? And isn't it of the utmost importance that one do that? If one doesn't, one may be misled over and over and over again. So how is one listening? Is one listening at least temporarily free from one's background? Is it possible? Not just theoretically, but actually possible to listen so fully, so completely, there's no room for connections to the background. What I know from my previous training or religious indoctrination or convictions, faith, and so forth. Can one listen to the wind in the trees without calling it either wind or trees, without even calling it sound? We do use words because we're talking, communicating with each other. But the listening needs no word and no description or knowledge, does it? How quickly the brain supplies the words and the reactions. I like it, I don't like it, it distracts me, it helps me. What kind of trees are those? Does it mean we're going to have a change of weather? All kinds of thoughts, each connected with the next. Can one notice that, be aware of that cerebral activity going on in the mind as there's listening? And start listening freshly because one has noticed the cerebral activity, the reaction to the pure listening. This is one of the questions we're asking, is can there be listening and looking so fully here, so unprejudiced and unpreoccupied with what one knows, that something is seen as for the first time, directly, not through the words and descriptions and explanations, which is how we've been trained to look. Little children, they don't look through the explanation and description and words, they look. But they're then being trained now earlier and earlier and earlier to know, to have words and categories. Not that words and categories are wrong. Can one see when they are in operation? So one understands what is happening in the mind and understands that the word wind and tree and branches and sound, that these words are not what's actually happening. Just to see that is enough. Don't have to do anything with it. Just an insight into our mental, physical processes, and not to mistake those for what's happening there. So, can one listen to what is said here and not be influenced by what one may have heard or read about the person who's talking? Not be influenced by the way it's being said. Or if one is influenced, to see that as quickly as possible. See it, that's enough. Then it doesn't operate mechanically and automatically, distorting what is being heard, or storing it as this is the truth, and repeating it without looking whether it's actually so. Somebody said, you have left traditional forms, but aren't you immediately creating a new form in the building and so forth? Well, the building is a new creation. It's a new form. There's no denying it. One has to look. It's a good question to ask. And can one look, not wait for the answer from one person and then sort of file that? But look, am I in fact making a thing out of what I'm doing here? A thing which is over and above, or extra to what's happening, namely sitting, walking, inquiring, listening, looking, dreaming, thinking. Is one making something out of this? My place, or one can notice these things. All of this is represented, the attitudes are represented verbally, pictorially, emotionally, throughout the brain and body. One can come upon them. My special place, the formless form, or the new, whatever. And if one finds that one is creating that, can one look at it and wonder about it? Why is one doing that? in clinging to some new entity one is creating, some new concept one is creating? Why is one clinging to it? Why is it important to one? Does it help assuage feelings of meaninglessness in one's life? Feelings of emptiness, anxiety? If one sees that, then what is this feeling of emptiness and anxiety? If I don't cling to my new concept, to my new creation. Clinging meaning I'll think of what I'm doing here and that I have a place to work and a group to work with. These thoughts recurring in the mind, giving solace and energy, away from facing what at times surfaces quite painfully as emptiness in one's life, or meaninglessness, anxiety, anger, fear. Clinging to forms new and old is always like a rescue ring, a lifesaver from facing what seems to be threatening our life. Why don't we explore that? Not cling to a new or an old form. We don't want to. Maybe we've never done it. We've never given it a chance. Because we have ideas about it. If you face anxiety, you may be overwhelmed with it. You may lose your mind. All kinds of ideas which shield and protect and keep the anxiety and emptiness and loneliness going. Has not been resolved. It's there in human beings all over the world since time immemorial. Can one begin to face it now when it comes up in a retreat such as this? At a time where one may be hoping for the beneficial effects of harmonic convergence. Few people asked me about this already while we were in California. One person brought it up after retreat, wanted my opinion about harmonic convergence. Somebody said, it's such a beautiful sound already. It is. And then I read last night in Newsweek about it. Someone else suggested maybe I give a talk about it. That if we had the title in our tape list, we could sell those tapes. Let's look at it. Maybe it's fun to look at this. I don't understand enough about it. I'm not well read on it, and I don't know if anybody understands very much about it. But supposedly, if I'm not wrong, it is supposed to be today and tomorrow a very unique, not very often happening constellation of the heavenly bodies, maybe just a few heavenly bodies, planets. Which if we do something like holding hands or humming together, will have a beneficial influence upon us. Or if not, there will be a very detrimental thing. We will go down. Be the end of the world. That was the title of that article in Newsweek. I hadn't heard that aspect of it. actually the heavenly bodies, and there are uncountable ones. There are, I don't think any mind can fathom or imagine the amount of heavenly bodies, stars, planets, galaxies, new stars, old stars, collapsing stars, or being created stars, and black holes. One immense energy that's been there since time immemorial. The energy of the entire universe is there. Why aren't we in harmony with it? Not just on 2 days. I think we have to ask, first of all, who do we think we are? We do think, don't we, that we are separate entities from this immense universe, the immensity of life. We're separate entities in that. That's what we believe, are convinced about strongly, thoroughly, maybe not so thoroughly anymore. Most human beings are totally convinced that we're separate entities, separate from life. That's how we talk about it. My life, the world, the universe, and me, out of harmony, or hopefully at some time in harmony. Can one question this assumption, this deep, thorough, solid assumption of being a separate entity? It means one has to see, which means one has to observe how it functions in one's moment-to-moment thinking and reacting and emoting and feeling. He hurt me, or she made me angry. I'm jealous of him. I should do better. I'm a failure. I always was like that. Endless ideas and images about this entity, with every thought about this entity reinforcing it, making it a little bit more solid, a little bit more believable. Can one begin to observe these thoughts and ideas and images as they crop up from moment to moment and question them? Question meaning not take it for the truth, just see it. And also be in touch with the feelings that are generated by these images and thoughts throughout the organism. The idea that I'm doing well floods the organism with good feelings of energy. And the idea that I'm wrong or bad creates pain and tension. Organs are affected and do their thing. Can there be a growing, deepening, widening awareness of how we think about ourselves, about others, and how the emotions are triggered by these thoughts? Our reactions to the emotions that are triggered, our displeasure at feeling depressed or angry, and then maybe our displeasure at feeling displeasure. just watch it all with a mind that is open to discover what's there, not to condemn, not to do or react, but to discover. These yearnings for harmonic conversion come from the separate feeling entity, at war with itself and with each other. When there is no feeling of being separate, isolated, divided, then there's enormous energy. It's there. One can glimpse it at times in a retreat like this. But why just at times? Because our own lives are so disharmonious. In conflict, divided, full of inner strife and battle with oneself and with others. We may project that onto the universe. But I really wonder, I seriously wonder whether the universe has ever been in disharmony. It's just what it is. And who is there to pronounce it harmonious or disharmonious? We're doing that. And then we want to set ourselves right with the universe. But what are we? Who are we? And who are the others? The 144,000? Why 144,000? What are human beings all over the world? Today and yesterday and tomorrow? Why do we need to think ourselves as separate from this ongoing, ever-changing process of life? So is one looking for inspiring ideas to make one feel energetic and feel together with other human beings? Inspiring activities together so that one does not feel isolated and apart? Then one will feel together with the people with whom one shares that common activity, maybe for the duration of that activity and a little bit longer. But when that is over, then where will our energy come from? The one that was gleaned from the shared ideas and activity. What will be the new provider of our energy? If we live like that, we will look for some new common cause, new common idea and inspiration. Always trying to nurture ourselves from some outside source, which is really the generation of our own ideas, the creation of our own ideas. Can one see the tremendous idea, the tremendous energy that can be supplied through our own ideas? Particularly when they're shared with others. We talked about this at the beginning of this talk. Is this the source of our well-being? Ideas, shared ideas? And also the source of our feeling undone when this comes to an end? When a common cause collapses? Turns out to have been false or facade, empty. Then how will we live this moment? We can try that this moment. To see the arising of inspiring ideas and not enter into it. To say no to that without effort. Because we've been through it so many times. And just remain with what is there. Maybe the feeling of emptiness, loneliness, or anxiety. Somebody mentioned already fear surfacing throughout the body and mind. And not distract oneself from it. And yet not wallow in it as another idea, this is good for me, maybe if I stay with my fear then I'll attain something. There is nothing to be attained. There is only what is, and what is that? Can one find out? Not superficially, verbally, through one's past knowledge, but directly. What is this moment? Without any crutches. I don't know. Can one start that way? The freedom from this, the burden of all of one's ideas and convictions and beliefs. And just start with not knowing. And therefore opening up to what's there. Or what's there opening up. we will end here for today.